I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thanks.
Do you want to read roll call?
Desart,
Here.
Dolan,
Present.
Bailey, he's not here. Almond,
Yep.
Ross.
Okay. Approval of the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
There's a motion by Russ, supported by Helmut. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Call the public on non-agenda items. New business. Discussion regarding village-owned properties.
So this topic came up, it all started back in last summer. We talked about it in January, and now we're coming back. You all requested to talk about this at a work session meeting. We have provided an updated memo that explains kind of the background and the information about all of the village-owned parcels. I've also provided you all with a map that this time I promise lines up to the spreadsheet that indicates what that parcel is, how it's being used. And through all of that, we came up with a couple of the more interesting parcels that could potentially have something done with them. And a lot of property we own is easements, parking lots, things that you aren't interested in getting rid of, nor would you probably do something for them. At the request of council, we've also had the village planner, Chris Corey, provide some information and an additional memorandum about this. And at this point, kind of wanted to open it up and have a discussion about it. With what direction you all would like to go with this topic.
What does management identify as viable properties for suitable uses? What would your preference be?
I know the building, we were talking about this just before we came down, it's the dead end of its life. I mean, how long do you stay here, what do you do, what are your options? I don't know what kind of discussions you guys had in the past. At one time, I've ran across some notes. So potential realtor engaged in this building, I don't know if that got off the ground anywhere or what the thought process was.
We had RFP development proposals, we had, I believe, right?
Is it possible to get copies of some of those? Because I know some of those probably predate, I know maybe Eric and I on the board, on the council, but maybe some of those ideas are still viable. The market.
That's what we talked about.
I did.
What? Didn't hear you.
Dave?
Just come on in, Dave.
Okay.
You good?
The door is malfunctioning.
No, there's a thing, just mention me.
Yeah, I think it got shut down. So the answer to your question is, I think we could. There were various concepts and proposals.
You mean for the whole complex?
Yeah,
Or
for
just, we only had the
They fixed about
Phase
these five.
Venture.
the story, and
Yeah.
or we had.
No, but there was one from
Townhomes.
the townhomes. I'm just thinking out loud that when that concept was done, the market was very different than it is right now.
Totally.
Stuff is not even staying on the market for long, so there is certainly a demand for residential housing. So it'd be nice to maybe revisit that and potentially even revisit those, that developer and others with new management, newer council, and see where those can take us.
And those were specifically related to this parcel? Is that what they were?
Yes.
The point of contention on Venture was that it was essentially subsidized, and
The
the revenue was
Versus
not
an outright sale?
versus market rate.
right? And they require, not to interrupt you, but they required a payment in lieu of taxes to make that work from the other taxing entities, which was a no-go.
And they wanted a third story, and the neighbors were not overly excited about a third story.
Which, understandable, but I guess my perspective is at this point, there's going to be development in the community and parking continues to come up, but parking is going to be an issue. Having a parking problem, in my opinion, is a good idea. Or is a good problem to have. And third story, at one point or another, we're going to have to make a decision where the priority lies.
Well, we're constrained by our boundaries, so the places where we can grow, we should grow denser.
Relocation, permanent or temporary costs were a significant issue.
Yeah, I can imagine, we were just discussing this a little bit before we came in here. Where would you go? Even in a
Well, it's
temporary
not
basis, where would you end up?
where would you go? It's where are you going to find the money to go anywhere?
Right,
Because
that was another issue.
both of them offered at the time was far, like it's a third of what we need to
To build a new one.
relocate somewhere.
Yeah.
Or build new or buy old or whatever.
Yeah.
So it just kind of,
As we were batting it around, that was the same thing, but even if you go interim, okay, you can rent small, save up the money. And that's where this kind of spreadsheet that I gave you guys, the next couple of years with the bonds, comes into play with my concerns financially, it's like,
Of course.
things are tight the next 2.5 years, 3 years.
The one nice thing about the venture proposal and concept is that the village offices would be reincorporated and condoed out, so to speak,
After the fact?
after the fact. So the space would still be here, and this building would still be here, but there'd be residential above it. So from the standpoint of, it would be a temporary move, but ultimately we, reside in the same place. That concept had lots of issues, that was just one thing that was nice about it, is that the village remained in the same location. Excuse me, I'm gonna grab it.
we're going up 2 stories. We're going 2 stories.
I totally agree.
Big
Strike some out of the job.
a view anyway, so 3 stories. It's nobody gonna be looking over a 2-story building anyway, so
Part of my concern about,
I'd be
well,
okay with 3 stories, but the money's not there.
it boiled down to the money for me, the payment in lieu of taxes, and also the fact that, to me, this is the prime parcel of real estate in a very desirable community, and we essentially were giving it away, and that didn't seem prudent.
The market value at that time was just too poor.
Well, it's not so much just the market value. We weren't receiving any taxable market rate value.
I mean, if this land were flattened and just lying here as dirt right now, it's worth 400 to 500 grand as a vacant, I think.
It probably is, but the thing of it is that we couldn't go anywhere.
No, I know.
for 450,000.
No,
I know.
Because-
Not at all.
Probably.
But I mean, I would say that's about what the market is, undeveloped and just sitting, it's a decent chunk. Is it radical to say that, could we house ourselves at the township facility on an interim basis?
That's a concept.
East 18 West Burdick, or
Their main one, their new, because they're not, I was over there and they're not anywhere even
Right.
close to capacity. I mean, what'd they build it for? In case they triple their staff?
That's an outstanding idea.
I mean,
On an interim basis while you had something else going on and built.
yeah, just to have that as a fallback, hey, in case because you don't want to start down a road that you can't finish, so you don't want to get this thing on the market or start, unless you know you have a place to house yourself.
Right.
I just,
I don't even know if that works. I don't
Well,
know.
that's what my next question, legally, is it even
Can we be out of the
out of our
village?
boundaries?
Can we be out of our boundaries? Can we have meetings out of our boundaries? A lot of great questions. I don't know the answers.
maybe we should ask our attorney. Maybe we can get him here next
This is not a common question, so I'd have to tell you tomorrow. But yeah, can you legally not be in your jurisdiction? Can you demand that people come to meetings not in your jurisdiction? But you could have your meetings at the library.
Which is
That's
outside of our
Sure.
jurisdiction.
It's out of your district. I thought it was close.
The fire,
Well, there could be
the-
some,
but
there
the
could be a
fire,
hybrid arrangement.
Fire
Fire
hall
hall
is
is-
right there.
there's meeting space there, and it's right within their district.
Right. So there's two, the legal issue of where you have to have your open meetings is one issue.
Right.
Which I tend to think is maybe you do have to be in your jurisdiction. I'm not sure you have to be housed there if you're, I don't know.
When it comes to tax collection and stuff like that, you may have some issues there too, that they have to be able to pay their taxes within their boundary.
I don't know. Yeah.
Well, and maybe it's, we don't necessarily actively market this, but through staff, through the downtown development director perhaps, we reach out to, certain developers. But we're not engaging a realtor necessarily, but hey, will you come take a look at this? Maybe it's even a request for proposals, because it's not a problem. Our relocation is not a problem until it's a problem.
I think you kind
from
of
the
look backwards a
standpoint
little bit too.
I
though.
agree.
Where do you want to end up?
Right.
And then, okay, figure out where do you want to be. Let's say the money is not an issue. Someone gives you just what you want for this. Where do you want to go? Where do you want to end up? Where do you want it to look like?
And where can you go on an interim basis?
So find out what you want to end up at and kind of work your way back from there. I think is kind of one way to look at it.
One of the advantages of this particular parcel is that it is walkable. Really, most of us, with maybe the exception of Eric, because you're on the other side of town, could walk to meetings. We could walk to the downtown from here. So there's that plus. So maybe this location long-term is exactly where we want to be, but perhaps this is not the building that suits our
Maybe we
needs.
don't need it all.
Well, we're using about, a quarter of it right now? Maybe a third of it by the time you do it, all the way down that
If you
wall.
consolidated and ergonomically developed a new office building, you don't need much.
And then maybe, because Glenn has mentioned to me a couple times, if he could get that other wing over there opened up, he could do some kind of business incubator over there. $1,000 a month, $1,500 a month. So maybe it's a new center right here that has the DDA, the chamber,
Police.
other things like that that are bringing in some of the revenue, because this building really isn't set up. I mean, they're over there with the chamber this winter freezing because the mail order book drop thing is leaking cold air on them, and they don't have vents going into their offices.
But
So it's
it
location-wise,
wouldn't be bad to figure out some of these, these interim solutions, just so we know in our back pocket, could we house ourselves at the township if we had to? Let's check that off. Is it legal? Let's check that off. Where could we have our meetings? At the, let's check that off.
Sure.
So as we're making decisions, we have plans that are already sort of in the winds predetermined.
There was a plan to, at some point, again, in one of these downtown concepts, and perhaps it was the 2006 downtown concept that McKenna and Associates produced, that showed, and again, it was just concept form, the village hall adjacent to Centennial Park.
It's in the master plan, I believe.
Yeah.
To the master plan.
Now, granted, that's a whole nother direction, but if we're looking at what we own, we do own other parcels that
Yes.
could be, more centralized, closer to another civic function like a park. Maybe it's not necessarily staying here. Maybe it's not locating to something that's not already ours.
Well, we were looking at the third building that Wackel was going to build too,
Right.
over there.
At the end of the day, it boiled down to cost. The biggest concern that we have
Right.
geographically and logistically is the police department. You could put the operations in any building. You could temporarily lease one of the offices adjacent to Central Park and operate the village from there. But the law enforcement complex has specific needs, which are primarily the cost prohibitive ones that we have. And Bob's suggestion there, at least in the interim, if there were to be any temporary move, resolves all of those, especially from the fact that they're already serving as our communications center.
It has some advantages.
Of course, there's a big if that would be received.
Don't know. It's just concept.
But just,
One of the things I think you have to have is a place to, house your meetings. But that can be accomplished at the fire hall, I think. Right? That's adequate for an interim meeting place. Police have to have a place to temporarily locate and your office functions.
Well, then,
You have to coordinate it with the fire department because they do classes
Right.
there.
Yep, sure.
And it's,
Yeah, like
there's a lot of moving parts a lot of moving parts and all that, again, and I go back to the final money, and that was kind of an issue before, you're kind of, whether it
That
was
was-
specifically related to this project or the overall financial picture, either way, the next 2 budget years are pretty tight before some bonds fall off. And I was telling Sue last week, is that when those fall off, you need to relax and enjoy that breathing room, because right now you don't have any breathing room.
Right.
Don't just say, okay, great, let's max out the credit card again in order to get somewhere. But, and then we don't know about we're supposed to know by the end of this month whether the 24 project, M24 is gonna go 19 or 20. So that's kind of hanging in the wind for another week or two. So, you know, I'm afraid of somehow getting like 2 irons in the fire. Next thing you know, none of them are
Sure.
tended well.
It'd be nice, since we, you know, what you just said about the budget, you know, being, you know, tight the next couple of years and bonds falling off in the future. Maybe this is that interim period where we're looking at, you know, concepts and we're thinking about our vision for this site specifically.
Good time to do it.
And good time to do it. And obviously, there's, you know, some mitigation that needs to happen with this building in terms of making it a little bit more, you know, presentable and functional. I love the idea of a business incubator space, you know, whether that's, you know, somebody who's starting up a, you know, as a CPA or whatever, here's a desk, you can rent it. And I think we have the space to do that. So, but there's a cost, and that would have to be, now's a good time to talk about it, since, you know, we're moving into the budgeting time of year, and, you know, we're looking at the next year
Because if you took
plus.
the same footprint, aside from the notch out front of the flagpole, and made a square building here, and then you had your offices in it, and the DDA, some other offices, and then the whole second story was, you know, 4 to 6 apartments generating some revenue.
Right.
That potential, I mean, police department and cohabitating with some of those could be an issue.
Well, I go back to the same
We don't want to be
concern that I had with
Yeah.
Venture.
Nah.
I don't
Could be
want,
office space, though.
I don't want to just liquidate the property because we're revenue poor.
No.
It is too significant to the downtown area to just give it away. This is going to be a legacy project. This is not something that I'm looking to simply willy-nilly find the first person that's willing to put an offer in and put up 4 walls. This is going to be the focal point of downtown being 3 stories for the next 100 years. And I wouldn't, and I'll just put it out there. Now, first of all, I do agree that we have to work backwards. I think we have already identified all the problems from before, the cost initiatives, things of that. I think we have to identify them and then determine what direction we want to go and then actively solicit for proposals. I don't, if we're going to do it, I don't see any purpose in passively putting feelers out there. I'd say we just do it or don't do it. But I just state right now, I wouldn't lend my support to what we had before. It's just
And
too
you've got,
significant.
you've got to have these contingency plans in place, I agree. We got to kind of know, okay, if we got something, here's where we can go for 2 years. Here's where we can have our meeting for 2 years.
Sure.
And I agree with you, and
It's all good.
but I wouldn't want to see just a realtor, you know, who's just kind of operating. I'd want to
Right.
see
Consultant.
a consultant, a request for proposals, reaching out to commercial brokers, commercial developers to
Absolutely.
do it right.
And Sue mentioned you don't want to be landlords, so, you know, maybe that's something you have to, you know, if you're building 3 stories, you're not using 3 stories, so what's the other use?
Right.
Or either embrace the idea of some revenue generated there and the hassles that come with it,
Office space.
or you don't and leave it aside and build smaller. That's just
Well,
a
see,
choice.
we were not going to be landlords with the venture thing. They
Okay.
were going to build it, and we were going to condo our portion, pay for that. The townhomes were, we'd have to leave,
So-
and that was going to be managed by somebody else, or
Okay.
sold. They'd
We
be sold.
we were going to be, in a sense, a tenant
Yeah,
Right.
of the development.
okay, like a tenant.
We
So
don't-
somebody else does it all,
There you go.
and we just take our space.
That's good, that's a
Yeah.
much better solution.
Yeah.
You
I
get
don't
to-
want
Instead of us building it all and,
having people call in the middle of the night that my water heater's out, or, you know,
Oh, yeah.
multiple things.
There's
that-
management companies.
There's,
But still, if you...
so we would take, to preserve Eric's point there, we would take a, you know, try to get a 99-year lease on our spot.
Right.
So that we're always here.
So then you're not looking to generate any revenue because you're not paying it all up front to begin with.
Correct.
You're minimizing your skin in the game on the front end.
Right.
and to
And
get
Joe
our.
may have a
And
point
that was the
that,
positive of that.
Yeah.
Joe may have a point that the climate may be better right now for that, without all these add-on frills that you didn't like, which I didn't like, the tax abatements and whatnot. It may not be necessary, it may not
Well,
be
that
necessary.
would have never gone because the town, the fire department, the township, the park and rec, and the library all spoke out against it.
Yeah,
Sure.
They aren't gonna go.
but it might be a climate now where the concept may be attractive, without,
At market rate.
without the need for those.
Oh, yeah.
Why don't we pivot to the other item now?
Well, can some of the rest of us put an opinion in?
I'm sorry, yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
I've been staying quietly listening to you people talk.
Somebody call Mo.
And woo, there she is. I think this space cannot be sold. The space is the overflow parking for the downtown. It's filled all the time, and not just with the Alcohol Anonymous, with the people from downtown, it's always busy. If we're gonna do anything, I think we need to cut some of this building down and tear the township portion down. We can put more parking in there, run up. The
We
police,
only got 7 spaces over there.
You mean
'Cause
tear
Joe
down
had
that wing?
I mean, tear down the wing.
Yeah, and Joe could only get, he had it all measured out and Corey did something, and you're only gonna gain 7 spaces in there.
I would bet you could get more if you really looked at it, because you've got the entire courtyard that you can use.
Well, why would you wanna do that?
And we'd have to
I would
look
never
at
go
it
along
soon.
with filling that whole area with parking lot, and then you've got a half a building.
So are you saying that
Essentially true.
build a new building, but make it smaller and leave a lot more parking?
To that point, you could tear off the crap we're sitting in right now, to be blunt.
I'm not saying we don't.
Tear the-
I can't believe the police department needs a space. They've got plenty of space right now. The village offices, they really have plenty of space. It needs to be cleaned out. Garbage has to go. It could be, it's definitely big enough. We did it for years. This building can be rented out or do whatever with it, but I don't think we sell it at all. We've got to keep it.
I think maybe we could entertain a hybrid of that, put some concepts together. My only concern there again is the most valuable piece of property in the village geographically turned into parking. So it seems
Well, why is it valuable?
geographically to the
Location.
downtown, it is the
With
walk-
parking, you know, it's,
You don't want to lose any.
no. And you know, you could leave the parking here, you could tear that portion of the building down, sell that portion of the property, split it off, and let somebody build something on that portion of the property. And just be separate. And just
Okay.
give it a chunk and keep the driveway.
Even if you redid or somehow this old portion to a newer thing or rehab it somehow, and then you just have a much smaller footprint we operate under, and this other stuff is transformed into something different, you're saying? That's still,
We never vacated the Addison structure when we redid it. You've seen it all now, right? I mean, it's pretty impressive. We never left. We hired a company who specialized in working around you, continuing, and keeping a wall where we could keep a wall. So that space never vacated during that entire construction. The police stayed, the office staff stayed, everything stayed.
Right, and you guys know me and my historical perspective, but there is something about this building that it has served the community for 50 years as a library. There's the street view of it, that it's symmetrical, its setback is with the rest of the buildings on the street, and so
Especially
maybe,
character.
I like that idea, maybe there's an opportunity to rehab a portion of it while still using it, and then move over to that and, rehab the other portion at a later date. Projects get phased all the time.
You would never know if you walked in the Addison structure that some of the old structure's still there. You can't tell.
It's beautiful.
You cannot tell. And that all was done for a price that I think you would be surprised.
If
We
we're
did it on a contract basis where the price couldn't go over a certain number. And all Bruce Pearson wanted was that clock, because you gotta have a clock if you're municipal.
Right.
I learned that during that process. You gotta have the clock.
If we moved on to a totally separate concept of rehabilitation, that would be my first preference, if that's where,
It's doable.
because this is the face of the village. This is the village
I could
guidelines.
contact that company who specializes in that type of project and just have them come take a look.
Yeah, there are 2 or 3 that specialize in municipal
Yeah.
buildings.
But
Cost.
only this one I found that really specialized in keeping what you have and working around you staying. It was an interesting concept.
Well, and if they have experience with working with municipalities, they could potentially help. There are grants available for
Yeah, and
companies to do
we
this kind
got
of stuff too.
We got, and they helped
And
us.
so that would be a big.
Company's called Partner, and that's what they do.
Would we then try and incorporate that into when the bond drops off, that period of time?
I think you're almost at that time, going, you were 2 more fiscal years.
Right.
By the time you go, get
Sure.
rolling, and get it out there.
Probably,
You want to bid it for a certain time of year to bid it?
You're
Yeah.
close now. You're-
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
But these are all things we could think about. I mean, these are, and have these plans in place.
I just think we've gotten to the point where this isn't really serviceable as a municipal organization.
Well, it's awkward, the circulation of it, you know, you have a main front door that
Sure.
is not used, although it
Very
is
few.
architecturally, that's the
Some people
entrance.
walk down the
right?
hallway to the sidewalk,
Right,
you come
you
in
know,
there.
so it'd be interesting, and that's, you know, down the road to talk
You
about
know,
concepts,
You know,
but
as you segment into your other topic, it's relevant here because what Mo was suggesting, I think is true, is you're not at a point yet, you and I have talks every other day, and just say on the office staffing, you're not ready to commit to what we need yet because we're still feeling some things out, but we're close. Well, it's important to know what that number is because I do think there's less space required than people think to house an adequate office staff for the village officer. And I do think it's not much more than the space. Your meeting space will be one of your bigger demands on space. So we need to figure that out, and that's coming together at the right time. What is the need? How many offices? How much?
We have as much hallway space as we do office space.
You do. Square footage, your hallway is as big as your office space.
Do we need to get going?
Yeah, we do. Unfortunately, this
I have one question
one that
about
was getting good.
the property at number 22. That property seems to have a building on it, according to the aerial photography. What is that building? Because it says vacant.
Where's that?
22?
22,
It's
just
on
south of
Gillespie Street,
Round Lake.
Pines property.
That's the village ice rink. You ever been there?
It's an ice rink?
No,
That's the pines. They refer to it as the pines.
Yeah,
Okay.
I had you there, Joe.
I did. I'm like, there's an ice rink and I didn't know about it.
Should we just add the other
There's
topic to
a
the
well
business meeting agenda?
Yeah.
Did you hear?
Going to, just real quick, the merge
Well,
property,
that's
merge
what I
parking
thought.
lot. How did that arrangement come
I
about?
didn't know what that was.
And then 24,
The lease.
according to the DEQ is listed.
We need a motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
So probably not developed.
I'll make a motion to adjourn at 6:28.
Let's
We do the
We
rest
didn't
of the
bring
thing.
Before we do that, Eric raised a question about the merged parking lot and how that relationship.
And is that avoidable? Can we negate that?
became, we can look back at that, but I just want to say something before we go into our regular meeting. Let's be careful, we have an agenda tonight, and we have an agenda for every meeting. Let's be careful that we're not inadvertently creating alternative agendas when we do our council comments. Because we raise topics and then we get specific. I try to keep you from getting too specific, but if you get too specific, the topic should have been on the agenda, so the person who we're getting specific about could have attended. So we all have to be careful about that, all right, under the Open Meetings Act.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but can I just
You can
ask
say-
a
absolutely.
question?
Yep.
The ordinance, that was all from the ordinance officer's report, which is, yes, that was
Kind of.
public knowledge. So why is there a problem?
I'm not,
Staying.
I'm not even, I didn't even link it to that. I think it's been a trend we've been doing for a while, where a topic gets raised, a topic goes topical, general, and then it just kind of escalates during our council time. And we just have to be careful because the people involved in that, and I didn't even think about it from an ordinance enforcement. I've seen it come up with other subjects, which are valid subjects, but let's put them on the agenda.
I think it could be suggested that may or may not necessarily be intentional.
It is not intentional.
I would suggest maybe it might be.
Oh.
I think there are topics that are not being resolved, and as a result, I believe it wouldn't surprise me if there's been an attempt to push resolution where resolution isn't necessarily addressed out of avoidance, not necessarily in the current situation, but
But in
previous.
the past. And then what happens then is I agree with you, actually, those people are on the list.
I'm going to a council meeting.
And I would suggest, I think you're
I
probably
made a motion
right.
to adjourn.
Support.
And what happens is you almost get to a point where you're